Oh, thank you so much for joining us here today. This is great. Welcome to the Poetry Flash reading series. And as Harold told you, I'm Joyce Jenkins, editor and director of Poetry Flash. Actually started with Poetry Flash a little bit later in '78, but Poetry Flash was going, and we were publishing events in '72, at the end of '72. Today we have with us two wonderful poets, two of Northern California's finest. I'm very happy to say, Francesca Bell and Molly Fisk. I'm delighted that you're here with us today. Their books are here for purchase after the reading, and the books are also available online at the nonprofit bookshop.org/shop/poetryflash. And Francesca has a little treat for you here. It's a free little broadside. I long to hold the poetry editor's penis in my hand and tell him personally, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to pass on this.
As opposed to piss on it.
Yeah, it's kind of terrific. Anyway, to know who's reading in our series next, join our mailing list at poetryflash.org or sign up here on our analog clipboard to receive our email blasts. You can find videos of this event and all of our readings on our Poetry Flash YouTube channel. Very easy to find. Just go to YouTube and put Poetry Flash in search. And thanks again to Art House Gallery and its impresario, Harold Adler, and thanks to Stephen Bunza and Rosalinda Monroy for their help today. Now, our first reader, Francesca Bell. Her most recent poetry collections that we have here are What Small Sound, a Kirkus Review's Best Indie Book of 2023, and Bright Stain, finalist for the Washington State Book Award, among other awards. Susan Terrace says, Francesca Bell's book, What Small Sound, is gorgeous, raw, and disarmingly honest, beginning to end. Francesca is also a literary translator. Her translation work includes Max Sessner's Whoever Drowned Here, and her poems and translations have appeared in journals including the Los Angeles Review of Books, Rattle, North American Review, Massachusetts Review, and elsewhere. Are you still the translation editor of, you're not now? No. But you were the translation editor.
For 5 years.
Wonderful. Translation editor of a Los Angeles Review. You received the Neil Postman Award for Metaphor from Rattle, another fine SoCal literary journal, and honors from the Pablo Neruda Poetry Prize. But you are the current Marin County, it just ended April 1st. But you were the glorious Poet Laureate of Marin County, which is something. And it says in the liner notes of one of your books, though she says she didn't complete middle school, high school, or college, she is an amazing, in my view, self-made woman of letters, a model for us all. And you focused on sharing poetry with underserved and marginalized communities, including those who are unsheltered and incarcerated, and that is wonderful. That's what poetry can do. Please welcome Francesca Bell.
Thank you so much, Joyce. I'm a little bit taller. I'm just gonna adjust this. I learned when I was on my first book tour that I'm actually quite tall, because I saw photographs of myself in groups of people. And I thought, dang girl, you're a lot taller than you thought. Thank you for that introduction, Joyce. And thank you, Joyce, for all that you do for poetry and have done for so long. And this will make me cry a little bit, but thank you for taking care of Richard toward the end of his life. I know there was the GoFundMe and you were organizing a lot of care for him. And he was just such a special person. So thank you for that. I'm very happy to be here with Molly Fisk, who has been my teacher and life coach and friend for a long time. And I'm very excited to hear her read from her book, which is a stunning book. So I'm going to read a little bit from, my 3 books. I decided to arrange this reading like I was getting married, so there's like something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. And I'm going to start with something borrowed, which is a poem I translated by Sessner. He's a poet. He's still living. He's German. He was born in 1959. And he's an incredible poet. A landscape. In the not too distant future, I will be old. I have seen it coming, yes, a train approaching. You stand on the railway embankment, throw your arms in the air as if you want to wave to a friendly face behind the windows, but everything goes much too fast. The train is gone before you know it, and you stay behind in a dull place. It is completely still. No bird that takes flight, not a waft of air, as if you're standing on a rug that begins to roll up from its edges. You're tempted to hop or to hide yourself behind a bush, but there isn't one. So you stand still and think a little about God. It is like before, only different. So now we're going to hear a little bit from my first collection, Bright Stain. And this is my take on aging, a little different from Max's. Prayer. When age sidles up, a final suitor, let me turn and take it without faltering, the way my body opens joyfully to a man. Let me leave whatever age touches unaltered, the way I've never liked to wash right after a lover. Better to keep passion's proof, its scent trails and bruises, to keep the light on and watch time have its way with me, threading silver through my hair, leaving a smoky gray that spreads between my thighs. I want to see my breasts deflate like sacks my lover's hands have emptied, and laugh, as even laughter ruins me, crumpling the surface of my face. I'm sorry, I have so many allergies right now. It's a disadvantageous time to read. So this poem, the title is it's the first line. And then the man remembers your body, remembers to love you again, flicks you like a switch, waiting, ready in the room's shadows. Loneliness rises from each reclaimed centimeter, a humiliating eagerness rushing you like a hound loosed in woods. Your cry like baying or keening, months of waiting become sound. After, the man sleeps, peaceful, but you are a door he's opened, a path grown over, now beaten back down. You feel his life, which will end before yours, slide slowly away into the dark. I should have said before, my husband is 21 years older, and so I've always assumed that he would die first. There are people in the room who know him, and I'm no longer certain that he's going to die first. He defies death. at every turn. And here's a love poem for him. I'm not sure he's ever read it. And I've joked before that I never wanted to read it if he was in the room because I was worried the women might swarm him. The After Sorrow. Sometimes you set fire to my body, licking like a flame what it will reduce to ash, while I shift and moan, a pile of carefully laid wood as its base begins to burn. Wherever you put your hands is a point of detonation, fingers pulling tiny triggers again and again, and you enter me as dynamite enters a mountain, sliding precisely in until bliss demolishes us. After, you soften into sleep and slide from my body the way a person on a steep slope loses the struggle to stop. Then I see we are rubble, still and separate, and grief washes over me like pleasure. And this is a poem that I wrote, it was during the pandemic, and at that time, near me, very near me, maybe a half a mile away from my house, there had grown an encampment of homeless people living mostly in RVs. And at the time I wrote this poem, there were just 23 of them. But eventually we peaked at about 170 vehicles there. We've made national news. It's called Binford Road. And so part of this poem takes place there. Learning to love the world that is. It's good to walk this first smokeless morning in weeks. Though fires burn not far away, winds are favorable at the moment to me. I hum as I pass the 23 RVs of the unhoused lined up neatly along the road, a smattering of tents, the tarped and trailered boat someone lives in, as if it were a camp and not an encampment. I'm thinking of rain, which is not forecast, and hate, which definitely is, and a restaurant I loved that incinerated last week. The flight of steps to the entrance survived, and at the top hangs the missing space where we celebrated our 20th anniversary in style. Joggers pass me, and I notice how, though we cover our faces, we cannot paper over the losses of this strange year. Miserly world, I think, just as flock after flock of geese lift their generous bodies from the stinking slough and fly low over the trees I walk among. They are like a book God writes across this autumn sky, its pages fluttering. The very God who inscribes himself on the hill's dry faces, who etches suffering onto a world that scorches, its forests immolating and magnificent. So like the chef at Meadowood, who shattered dishes and people just before he plated beauty. I'm like a person who resists at first the temptation of a kiss, but then leans fully in, my heart rising on the voices of the geese, their cry a hinge that sings as it does the necessary work of opening. I am proud of my county that we have, we've devoted the last couple of years a social worker's entire time to helping the people on Binford Road to find permanent housing. And I think we're down to about 60 vehicles now. So I'm reading this one for Christina because she features in this poem. She and I used to go camping together, and there's a little scene from what I admit was my last camping trip. After the hearing test, it's 2 days before I cry. Grief sneaks up on me the way sound does now, my ability to mourn as sluggish as my inner ears. Cilia do not rejuvenate. We have that in common. I won't mind losing the clamor of cocktail parties, high grind of the dentist's drill, the triggering retch of other people's vomit. But I'd like to keep Telemann's trumpet concerto in D, the tiny chuff my python makes up close to my ear, the calls of 2 Canada geese as they circled the slough this morning, seeming lost, their cries trailing them like a woman's heavy train, and the indecipherable murmur of my beloved's voice as she held my hand while the bear ate my baked beans just outside our tent. Though I could not make out her assurances, may they burble over me forever. Loss accrues, the geese can tell you. It compounds like interest. O world, leave me slowly. Let me dally over each diminishing return. I would like to brag that my baked beans were very popular with that bear. But I was so scared, I was crying. I grew up in Idaho where if a bear comes to your campground, it's a grizzly, and they tend to break into your tent. Christina's from California. She was cool as a cucumber. For my whole life, I've been bitten by dogs, and for some reason, I've never grown wiser nor afraid. And this is about not the last dog to ever bite me, but the largest one. Mistakes of one kind. The dog was sleek, brindled. He couldn't help people wanting to touch him. The silence of the beautiful is easy to misconstrue. I offered first my hand, then my face. What's very large is often hard to see. His menace was like that. What happens fast can only be experienced in retrospect. His bite was like that. I leaned into peril, sweetly, as if into a kiss. I was always like that. My face was sleek. It caused its usual commotion. The dog was brindled, as big as a man. Once more, I was almost lucky. A surgeon can revise what a wound has written, amend the story a dog's teeth made. But I prefer to see my judgment lapsed than risen on my face. He was a hell of a dog. He was a Great Dane, and he weighed 180 pounds. And still I'm not afraid. So I feel that at this moment in history, and given that we're in Berkeley, the site of so many protests, that we need to have at least one abortion poem in this reading. And this is my offering to the canons of abortion poetry. And it has an epigraph, which is from Pope Francis, speaking about abortion. He said, "It's like hiring a hitman. Right to life. I know what you are, little hitman, little cherub. Snuck up into me, swum past my barriers, implanting like a movie monster who takes a person hostage from the inside. You merely tap your unformed foot, and my body bursts into symphony. Blood volume cranked dizzyingly up, breasts swelling in fiery crescendo. Nausea slams me forward, just as your father liked me, a body bent double to take him. I'm on my knees, little one, surrendered, vomit heaving out of me like prayers. I know, oh, I know the life you've come for." So now we're to the newer part. I feel I don't have to really search for the blue parts, but you've heard some old and some borrowed. And these are all uncollected as of yet. And I've written a lot about school shootings, and this is a more recent poem, based unfortunately on my life. After calling my child's principal to report the boy researching guns on his computer, I find myself on the floor, surprised to be crying, the way my FBI agent friend was surprised to find himself shot through the thigh. A bullet travels so fast it can enter and exit your body unnoticed. Fear lives so big in me, it can go undetected, but comes shaking out. When I speak with the principal, she says thank you, over and over. If you see something, say something, they tell us, and I do. I think she's a very nice woman, like all the other very nice women, the dead ones, and the one in Uvalde who stepped into the hall with the gunman to test if her classroom door was locked. I think of that woman from my floor and quake like a person riven by gunfire. In the video, the gunman has swagger. He is, I would say, of excellent cheer. And his gun sounds like a good American movie. Automatic, semi-automatic, what is the difference among friends and fellow countrymen? The sound of children screaming has been removed from this video. The gunman fires in bursts and then pauses, like a child checking his work. Officers mingle in the halls like guests at a funeral. The gunmen don't kill themselves anymore, I've noticed. They decline to remove themselves from the video. They ask for rides home. They drop their weapons and surrender. They hide in closets and wait for police to breach the unlocked classroom door. The way my child breached my body and then left me forever ajar. The way the gunmen breach with their bullets, even those they don't hit. Even the mothers at a great remove from the video, safe on their kitchen floors, but crying. And the principals say thank you. Thank you for removing the weeping of mothers, for scrubbing the sound of children screaming from the video, for rendering them all silent, as if they are already dead. These next two poems, I have a good friend whom I've never met to thank for. I've been corresponding for, I don't even know how many years it is, with an amazing, brilliant man from Afghanistan. And we just write to each other mostly about poetry. And this poem is based on a story he told me from his life before he came to America. Some were weary with their edges worn out, for solo. Because it was Kabul in 1999, because they were forbidden and he was afraid of them, he left at first the bag of human bones handed down by his cousin in a distant room on the other side of a courtyard, and only touched them now and then when he absolutely had to master their geography. But slowly the bones migrated to his medical school bedroom, and he spent long hours exploring them, arranging them on his bed into what approximated a human form, though because the pieces were from several different bodies, it remained a flawed puzzle, a collection of parts like all of us that didn't quite fit. Nights he memorized each bone's landscape, the way a person studies a new lover's body until his hands have it by heart. He slid his fingers into each smooth fossa, along every notch and groove, feeling where muscles once attached or inserted, where blood vessels pass through. He hadn't known there would be fissures, holes, so very many depressions. He hadn't expected to regard the broad wings of the Ilia and see a cradle where a child could rest, or his father, twin crests where a lover might have anchored himself, back when the hips carried their burden of flesh, and the flesh the weight of its longing. Once he fell asleep, holding the skull's hollow to the emptiness of his own heart, as it beat and beat against its shelter of bone. And so Solo told me about the way you speak about sleep in Persian, and so I wrote this poem in response to that. Approaching sleep. I want to get to sleep the way a person gets there in Persian, not by falling or going. I want to be taken. The way a wildfire takes a neighborhood, the way age takes beauty and grinds it to dust, the way water takes our dirty faces in its ungraspable hands, the way a lover finds you in the position called begging and takes you, the way you take him crying into your body before sleep steals in and takes you both after. So, do you guys have 2 more poems in you? Okay. Well, I mean, there will be more from Molly, just 2 of mine. So this next poem, I guess is, oh, now I'm forgetting the word for ekphrastic. I was thinking epiphanic. It's an epiphanic ekphrastic poem that came after I had seen some Bernini sculpture in Rome. And it's written about his torrid affair with a woman named Constanza, who happened to be married to someone else at the time, a man who worked for Bernini. Quarry. Bernini laid his hands on stone and changed its vernacular. The way his hands on her skin altered her, reduced her to gibberish, like someone possessed. Lying with him, she babbled the way a person speaks in tongues as God burns through her. He was a master of the chisel and rasp, could polish a piece until life radiated from it, saw each story that waited, trapped, for his hands to tell it. She was a story, written in flesh. He turned her like pages, kneeling before her, behind her, tracing her shape with his tongue. Every stone has a life inside it, aching to come out. She glowed when he finished, the way the bust glowed that he made of her. Lips parted, hair undone. She looked directly into the eyes of her beholder, almost a real person. When he found her with another, his own brother, he broke 2 of the man's ribs, that he might feel the pain of her catch in his breath forever. To her, he sent a manservant with a basket of gifts and a razor with which to cut her face to ribbons. He never could stop remaking the world. Years after, he carved her a second time, but rough, writhing with snakes. He smiled when he looked at his work. The woman who turned men to stone turned to stone. She had to have been a hell of a woman. So I'm going to close. I've already warned Molly about this. I'm going to close with a masturbation poem. Because every reading should have one. Just a minute. I must be nervous because my throat has gone dry. Okay. Flying solo. Role play is harder alone in the hotel room, it being more difficult to suspend disbelief single-handedly. I can't look at the ruined body, even I don't want to touch anymore. Flesh inching down my bones' sheer faces. I'm striated, stretch marks rising, a blurred braille, across skin that tears, easy as paper now. I never tell my right hand what my left hand is doing, as my fingertips open me and linger, stuttering on the sad parts. Oh, darling, I whisper, let me touch you. Don't worry, I can disappoint you as well as anyone. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay. Amazing. Our next reader, absolutely delighted to introduce our next reader, poet, essayist, and radio commentator Molly Fisk. She's with us here today to celebrate her brand new novel in verse, Walking Wheel, a sequence of linked poems that follow a newly married couple's first year of building a life together in the American West of 1875. In it, she explores intimacy, work, and resilience through historical voices. Molly Gloss said, Molly Fisk reminds us of what poetry can do, put to the service of story, which reminds me, the quote and her work, reminds me of Muriel Rukeyser's quote, the universe is made of stories, not atoms. Her previous poetry books include The More Difficult Beauty and Listening to Winter, as well as multiple collections of commentary and essays, including Everything But the Kitchen Skunk, Ongoing Observations from a Working Poet. I think of her as the voice of Nevada County. And her important community work received an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship in 2019, and she served as Poet Laureate of Nevada County, California. Her honors include the Robinson Jeffers Tor House Prize, Dogwood Prize, and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and California Arts Council. She lives in Nevada City, where she teaches writing and works with poets and writers in the community. Thank you for making the trip and being with us today. Please welcome Molly Fisk.
You are so welcome. Now, do you know the folk singer Utah Phillips? He lived in my town, and he took me under his wing for a couple minutes and came to my house and told me the color of pink, whatever that stuff is, the plastic stuff that goes over a light, that I should always have, and said you have to have your microphone like this so people can see your face instead of coming up like this and having it go down towards you. So when I look at microphones, I think about Utah. He also had an eidetic memory, so he and I, before he died, we were going to do a show together, but he was telling me that I had to memorize all my poems, which I'm not someone who knows very much how to do. And he could just do it like that. So I was crabby about that part and thinking, how long do I have to do this? And then luckily he died, so I didn't have to do it after all. I'm gonna read you from my book. It's pretty cute. It doesn't have me on the back, so many people are gonna think I didn't write it because it's not like what I usually do. It's my first book of poems in 15 years. This has to be higher. And it's not, I didn't plan to write a novel in verse. I wasn't thinking about historical fiction. I started writing the first poem in 1998, over time wrote more and more of them, kind of as a side gig. And now I have this book. Halfway. I am nowhere I have ever been, she thinks, and married. Who could find me? The sky looms nearly white above the wagon, miles of blowing grass, a stand of scrub willows beside the creek. His felt hat is just visible still, beyond a rise. He's gone to scout the ground ahead, a careful man inside his youth and looking out for her. She skins the rabbit he shot, lays the pelt to dry across the wagon tongue, washed clean of blood, dries the knife on a handful of chickweed. When they have a baby, that fur will make a nice hood. She forces the carcass onto a sharp stick and sets it turning above the fire. A little breeze works its way among the willows, companionable sound, joining the intermittent jingle the mules make, grazing some way off in their traces. She isn't lonely or scared, not used to the scale of this land yet, when there's so little overhead to hold off the sun or the stars. I've never seen such a paucity of shade, like an assault. His hat has disappeared from view. The blood's metallic scent gives way to the savory odor of cooking meat. Well, this is home, she thinks. It looks like home, and inside the wagon is all we own. Never mind the house he's been building since snowmelt, and some chickens I haven't met. Night thoughts. He lies awake listening to her breathing and the little rustlings in the grass beside them, mice or snakes, the mules every now and then blowing. Above them, all the stars in their accustomed places, slowly turning. The wagon's bulk a vague shadow in the dark. He considers his love for her, its real weight balanced in his heart, distinct as a bucket of milk or a sawn log, and is suddenly afraid. She could die in childbirth, a lion could take her, a bear, a creek in sudden flood. Her back is warm against his ribs, and she stirs in her sleep. Lord, let me keep her always safe. Let me never waver. Black Creek. They are racing summer. He goes off at dawn into the trees, and his axe rings all day, felling the straight pines, limbing them up, chopping the waste into stove lengths and kindling. She joins him in the afternoons to load the wagon bed with fuel, and then they saw and saw until her hands can scarcely hold their grip and her shoulders ache. Her skin has worn raw. At night she wraps her palms in strips of rag dipped in fat and a pinch of salt. It stings but brings the calluses on faster. They sit on the porch steps in mid-July twilight, tossing a stick for the dog until even he tires, falls to the ground at their feet, his lolling tongue the color of half-ripe berries, the ones that hang on their arched canes across Black Creek. She's never built a barn, just made 100 pies in her mother's stove to feed the builders. She does not count the boards they've sawn, fearing the number will lower her spirits too far for revival. I could eat half a pie myself, she thinks, looking out across the yard, if only I could keep my head up long enough. He watches exhaustion overtake her, draws her head to his chest, and lets her sleep. Observation. So these protagonists are named Miles and Phoebe, and then stage left enters a hired man named Tom. All of these people are teenagers. Observation. Miles and Tom walk up into the trees on the hunt for 3 straight long cedars that will become the roof beams, girth about a wagon wheel's width around. We'll cut them square, thinks Miles, shaving the curves with his eyes from every trunk they pass. Nothing is right yet, and they keep walking. Sun filters down through the overstory. Tom has a quiet step. Miles can just hear him every 3rd or 4th footfall, rustling the undergrowth. Good man, he thinks, on this first day. Steady, not showing off or talking more than necessary, comfortable in the woods and in himself, it seems. He's young and there's always more to learn about a person over time, but most of us show ourselves plain from the first to anyone watching. We can't help it. Miles remembers his father describing someone to him as too fast. Just listen, son. He's talking too quickly and thinking faster than makes any kind of sense, skipping along, maybe to confuse the others or because he just can't help it. Either a problem of motive or of character, but equal problems in the end. A man like that will tip any group out of plumb. It's not worth what good he might bring with him. His father shook his big head. Like an ox who won't let himself be yoked in tandem, strength and heart just wasted. You watch now. Keep your eyes open to see how men behave. You can learn a lot, and you're a smart boy. There, says Tom. Let's see, answers Miles. Supper. He sits on the bed to take his boots off, watching her at the stove, a pinch of salt, a stir, the way her arms reach toward things with such confidence, gesture second nature, or all nature, a heron plucking a fish out of the creek, fox leaping for his mouse. The slight sway of her hips, moving from stove to shelf to table, and how smoothly what she thinks of becomes true. She makes him feel enormous and clumsy, thick fingers at the laces, pulling socks over his ankles, flexing his toes. She's a finch to my ox, he thinks, although every inch of her is precious to him now. He best likes the small of her back, that curve as beautiful as any tool he's used, any first snow, drifted over a fence of his childhood when snow was glory. Inkling. She isn't sure, but she feels unlike herself. The red flash of a bird's wing this morning against the dark pine trunks brought her half out of her chair with excitement. His wrist at breakfast and the way his fingers held the spoon, familiar shapes, precise and vulnerable. Her eyes fill over nothing now, and her bodice buttons seem a little tight. She will wait another week before she tells him. Cordwood. Wood is stacked in the lean-to on the house's north side to feed the stove in summer, and as the men bring more down from their tree cutting, someone, usually Tom, splits the rounds into stove wood, which lies scattered in the sun to dry out of sight, since Phoebe despairs at the disorder when she can see it while toing and froing through the front door. At least one view must be serene, she said to Miles firmly, in all this hubbub. So matters of wood and heat are undertaken out back, where they cannot mar a visitor's first impression of the place. We may be rustic, but we are not untidy. Miles almost laughed when she said it, so intent on propriety, though her face was pink from the washing steam and her apron quite askew. He and Tom traded serious looks and drove the wagon around back to unload. It is dry enough at this altitude to season a young tree cut in June for burning after the new year, so the deadfalls are split and stacked first, filling the lean-to and starting a wall 4 feet high around the house. Once dry enough, the split young trees are layered beside them. Anything big they've felled stays up on the hill to wait another year. Phoebe loads her arms by holding the tail of one stick in her left hand, which with her bent arm completes a U. There's the stick right there. And then piling 6 logs into the open shape. As she walks, her right hand can balance the load, or if it's stable enough, she can pick up an 8th log to carry. My grandmother taught me this. I remember the day I moved from one stick in each hand to this magic of more, and how I was learning my letters then, so I knew that U very well, and loved, I still love, bringing my separate understandings to work together. As useful as yoking oxen, and as powerful when they can be coaxed into an unperturbed tandem. Walking wheel. It's raining, first rain of the season, hitting the tin roof and rolling down to the eaves, clear water sliding to meet the ground in long strings, an irregular but constant beat that Phoebe matches with her hand on the spokes, keeping the big wheel turning, spindle turning, the wool pulled steadily into a thread, fine enough for seaming, hemming, everyday stitches. As she spins, she rocks from one bare foot to the other. It's not a real step, just a shift of her weight, but enough to name this graceful and essential tool a walking wheel. She spins and thinks of circles in her mind's eye, the wagon's massive wheels, the shallow skillet's shape, open end of a jay's nest when you look down from above. There are 2 wooden plates, her thumbnail almost, Miles's blue eye and the black pupil floating in it when he balances on his elbows above her. A year is a circle, she says to herself, and so is a potato if you squint. An egg, sort of, a hanging pear looked up at from underneath. Breasts, of course, my swelling girth, the sun and moon, Miles's arms around me encircling the end of a sawn log that isn't quartered yet. She stops the wheel to add another pile of carded wool to the distaff, ties it loosely, puts muscle back into the spin until it's up to speed again. The sky's a circle when you're lying down, she thinks, and raindrops when they form, before they stretch the way they do, or flatten out and splash against the ground. There's a lot of work in this book. It's about love and work. And I find myself saying it's about love and hard work. And then I think it's hard work. But they didn't. It was just the usual work for people from that time. This is called Bathing. On Saturday nights, Phoebe and Miles take their weekly bath. This is one of the secret luxuries of their marriage, only 2 bodies to be cleaned in the steaming water, rather than the multitudes at home. Phoebe hauls the first 2 buckets and builds the fire up in the stove. The kettles hiss a little, and the cabin's air gathers humidity. Miles hauls the next and strips as Phoebe pours the hot water into her wash tub and refills the kettles with what he's carried. Before he steps in, his body stark white where his clothes have covered him, and acorn brown at his neck and forearms, which have been bare. Phoebe pours in another measure of cold. She hands him a square of the soap she's made, scented with mint from her mother's garden, a cooling odor. He rubs its harsh surface down his legs and scrubs his feet, wets arms and chest, shoulders, lathers the brown hair of his groin and thighs. Phoebe pours water from the kettles, not fully hot yet, over his hair, down his back, and soaps and rinses. Gradually his skin loses its deep brown as grime and the salts of his body are sluiced away, and his white parts become rosy with heat. When he is done, she stands ready in her shift. She empties the kettles into the tub and steps in, slipping the cotton over her head. While Miles dries his back and legs, he watches the way she bends and straightens, attending to toes, heels, under her arms and breasts, her slight moon shape her belly makes now, her long white flanks, her face. He soaps her back for her and pours the rinse water over her hair, twice, 3 times, her neck arched back and her eyes closed. These rituals almost always end in their bed with tongues and minty fingertips, but not before she has dried herself, showing him the apple of her bottom and the dark V of hair veiling what's between her legs. He almost cannot bear the exquisiteness of waiting as she dries her hair beside the stove, so he walks out naked to the porch and hurls the cooling wash water over the rail. We wanted to leave some time for you to ask us questions if you had any questions. So.
Can I just clap first?
Yes. Thank you. Hillary.
Can you talk about some of the research you did, like for example, the U shape that she makes for carrying the wood?
My grandmother taught me how to carry wood exactly that way. I'm really happy to be getting so many people wondering how much research I did, but I'm actually a horrendous researcher. And most of what I had to look up was stuff I already thought I knew, and I was usually wrong. But a lot of it, I know how to do a bunch of this stuff. And I've read and read and read and read lots of books about the West. Yeah. Uh-huh.
You base a lot of it on your family history, or was this
None of
just
whatsoever.
your own interest?
They just came to me. They showed up.
You should talk about where you live.
I live in Gold Country. I live in Nevada City. But I put them up in Cedarville, which I have them come down from Central Oregon to Cedarville, California, which if you don't know it, it's in the northeasternmost place in California in the Surprise Valley. You can see Nevada and Oregon from just standing in the middle of town. My sister said, if nobody has any questions, ask them why, ask yourself from them, from me, why you didn't name the dog. And I don't know why I didn't name the dog. There's a dog in here and he has no name. It's a he, but he has no name.
What breed is the dog?
It's a brown dog. That's all I'm gonna say. It's not a little dog, and it's not a huge dog, and it wouldn't bite you if you went near it. It would
It'd
be
probably
nice.
bite me.
No. Do you have any questions for
question.
Francesca?
There's a
Oh,
question over
Well, I
there.
have a question for both of you.
yeah.
Over the years, we've gone from a typewriter
Uh-huh.
to a computer, and now Wi-Fi and AI. How have you transitioned to that change in the last 25 years?
For me, I still write in a notebook most of the time, and then I transfer it over to a laptop. I used to rent a self-correcting Selectric when I lived in Stinson Beach and started writing in 1991, and then I used that, but luckily I don't have to anymore.
Okay.
I have very reluctantly transitioned to anything. I still write in a notebook, and then I do the same thing. I transfer onto a laptop, and I do think that word processing is it's a much easier way to revise, I would say. But I hate AI, and I refuse to use it for anything. I don't want to ask it one question. Increasingly, I just wish we didn't have the internet at all anymore. I'd be willing to not be able to look up answers to the questions that I have. GPS might be hard to part with. But you know, we used to find our ways around. I can't remember now. How did I know where to go? I don't know. Now we're all helpless.
You looked at a map.
Maps.
Yeah, I guess I must have. Yeah, in the olden days.
Right.
No, we're
Molly's
not
next book
we're
is
not
going to be
helpless.
about that
We're still
era.
writing poetry. We're not helpless.
Yeah, that's right.
Every
That's right.
poem is a victory.
Yeah.
True. I
Going
want to
to a
know.
higher plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to know what possessed you to translate.
I don't know, idiocy. You know, I was an exchange student in Germany when I was 14, and so I became quite fluent in German, but I didn't even have any idea how to translate, and I've never had a class or anything, but I always had this sense that it would be really interesting to translate. And so then I had a friend, it was just an online friend who lived in Jordan, who was working on his master's degree in English literature. And so a lot of the time students like that in the Middle East are, they go on Facebook and they befriend a lot of like American poets, just as a resource. And I asked him once if he'd be interested in co-translating with me from Arabic, because for some reason I thought that would be a good way that I could gather my courage for translating from a language I actually know and can read. And it was really a good way. I mean, if you can co-translate with someone, which is terrifying, you know, I used to feel like it was like there's someone that you kind of trust them, and you have a hold of their hand and you're blind and you're going across a freeway. I mean, that's what it felt like, because you really have no idea what's happening. Because especially with Arabic, I can't even read it because of the different alphabet. So I just thought it would be fun, I guess. And it is fun. It's an amazing thing to do. One of my favorite things I've ever done is translate.
That's the reason to do anything.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, definitely don't do it for money. Yeah.
Money. It grows on trees, and we have all these trees.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at it that way. Yes.
I got a question for both of you. Do you think every language has nouns and verbs? That's how it's structured?
I have no idea.
Me neither.
I have no idea whether every language has nouns and verbs. You would assume so, because otherwise it would be very hard to talk about anything. I know in Arabic there were oddities, like they don't use punctuation, nor I don't think they use capitalization either. And I remember Noor used to say we would have like about a 16-word line, and I would say, could you just, you were struggling with this, could you just tell me the actual individual words in the Arabic? And he would laugh and he'd say, you know, there are only 4 words in Arabic, you know, that, and we just know it. I mean, so languages are very different, but I don't know about the answer to that. I definitely am not an expert in languages.
I speak a little bit of Norwegian because I lived there for a year, and they have nouns and verbs, but they don't decline their verbs. It's all is, was. Yeah, it's very simple. It's because it's so cold, they don't want to open their mouths a lot.
We're both Norwegian. I thought it was because they were drunk all the time.
Well, there's that. There is that.
Oh, dear.
Joyce, do you have a question?
I'm just fascinated listening to you and thinking about how every language has got to have some kind of grammar, even if it's imaginary or ethereal or assumed,
Yeah.
because otherwise there has to be some structure, even if it's no structure, but it's agreed on.
Right.
Otherwise,
How does it work?
it falls apart.
Yeah.
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 So.
Well, and I think different cultures are more comfortable with things falling apart. Because the language, you know, that I know the best other than English is German. And in German, they have a rule for everything. I mean, it's exactly, if you think about Germany and what we know of their culture, their language is exactly that. You know, there's a rule for everything. Nothing is left to chance. Everything is very explicit. You never have to wonder who's doing what to whom. It's phonetic. I mean,
You have to wonder what the hell is going on, though, because the sentence begins and then goes all over to Sausalito and comes back, and then there's the point at the end.
Yes, but if you know the language, then that's not a problem.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's full of rules. I mean, really, really, really full of rules. Yeah, there's no wiggling around in German.
Have you thought of doing, Molly, have you thought of doing stories about connected stories about the Western life, or it comes to you as poetry? These stories come to you. This Uber story that comes to you with all of its little glimmers and moments comes to you as poetry.
Yeah. I don't plan things, Joyce. I really don't. And I was surprised when this started coming to me, and after about 50 poems, I thought, shit, it's a book. And the hardest part of the whole thing, it took me about 1.5 years, because I'd just written them as one-off poems, as I felt like it, months apart. I had to get the chronology and the continuity together. So she was pregnant she was in her 3rd month for 4 months. And they were eating apples when the tree hadn't started blooming yet. And I mean, there was just this mess of gestation and weather and all this other stuff that I had to fit together. And I possibly influenced by her, I strung garden twine all over my kitchen and hung the pages with clothespins.
Oh.
So that's how, some people put things on glass doors or the floor if you don't have any cats and dogs. And I just had this ridiculous, I had to take it down after 2 weeks, so I had to work hard to get it into the right order. Yeah.
Compared to putting out a poetry book, all poetry, putting out a book that poems tell a story, which made you more crazy, process-wise.
What wise? Process-wise. I think they were equally crazy. I mean, it's very hard to put together, I think. It's very hard to put together an ordinary book of poems that you've written over time, and maybe there's some themes, and I still don't know what a theme actually is, and then you don't want to have it, you don't want to have all your divorce poems in one section and then all your going to Paris poems in another section. You have to mix everything up, but still make it continuous in some way.
And it's supposed to have an arc.
Fuck the arc. I was not going to write it. I mean, when this started, I did try to make it into a novel. I took a bunch of the poems out of lines, and I was thinking I could just have, tiny little paragraph-long chapters here and there. Novels are full of people's shoes and all this connective tissue that I didn't feel like getting into. I also didn't want anything bad to happen. So there are natural, ordinary household disasters in this book, but there's nothing bad. Everybody lives.
Sweet.
So
Sweet.
That gives us hope.
it gives you hope. It gives me hope. And also, I hope you will buy a copy of the book, because there's lots of sexy parts I'm too shy to read in public that you might like to see.
Well, and the sexy parts are very hopeful. No, I really, when I read it, I called Molly and said that I really wished that teenagers would read this, because a lot of teenage girls, maybe all teenage girls now, are subjected to what is really a horrifying sexual landscape that's been completely influenced by pornography. And this book is so tender, and then, it's a young married couple, and they're devoted to each other, and they're working hard to build a life together. Even Republicans could like this book, even with the sexiness in it. And he's very concerned with her pleasure, and I just feel like this book could be an antidote to so much of what is ailing our youth right now. So I highly recommend the sexy parts. And I didn't tell Molly this, but I considered ambushing her and reading some of her sexy poems along with mine, but then I thought
Next time.
I thought she might not like it. So
I would have probably gone outside.
someday when she's not here and I give a reading, I'll read some of her sexy poems. They're very sexy. but beautiful, and very hopeful.
Molly, your radio pieces are more prose than poetry, but of course they have poetry techniques in them as well. Do you, having all that experience writing prose, do you foresee writing longer prose pieces?
Since I don't plan things, I don't know. I have written, so those essays are 3 minutes long. On the radio, you don't get any wiggle room. It's almost like Germany.
Yeah, exactly.
And I started writing them in October 2005, and I have written 717 3-minute essays, which is about 540 words. And I still like doing it. The only thing I've written that's longer than that, I wrote an article that was published in Harper's Bazaar about my famous literary uncle Updike. And that was hellish to write because it was so long.
Flash fiction, perhaps.
Well, you know, my average poem length is 18 lines.
I know.
I'm a short form person so far. But I can see that there might be things I would want to think about that would take longer. Like with the longer essay from Harper's Bazaar, I did 19 revisions of that, which is about 17 more than usual. So there may be a way for me to grow up a little more as a writer and a person and work harder. And that might involve something more to do with prose. But the radio, they just asked me to do stuff on the radio, and I had no idea what they meant, and then this happened. So it's more like recess for me, and the poetry is the real work.
And did your uncle see your poetry or encourage you in any way?
He was not a teacher kind of a person. I did send him my first book, which is about incest in our family, but not involving him. And he wrote something nice back. He and Gary Snyder both type on postcards. So you get this with the signatures. It was hilarious that they're so similar. And I made a couple of CDs out of the early radio essays, and he wrote me a very nice note after he listened to those in the car. But he wasn't a participatory relative. Yeah. Yes.
This question is for Francesca, but it's really for both of you. I think it's for anybody who writes. So you have such an extraordinary frankness and openness, willing to share. And was that hard for you to develop, or was it? And how does that sit with you in your feelings of playing and confronting the world?
And my feelings of what?
In playing and confronting the world.
So it wasn't hard to develop. It's just how I am.
Yeah.
So I didn't work at all to develop that. I'm struggling right now, honestly, because the poetry world has become a world where everybody thinks that everyone should think alike, and there's a lot of censorship and canceling, and so I have found that the thought police have moved into my head in a way that I had never experienced in my life. But other than this current climate, and then now we really have kind of danger, in my opinion, from the far left and the right. So I don't feel very comfortable saying or writing anything. I feel sort of mute at the moment. But generally for me, I'm a weird person that I'm not. I became convinced early on that everybody's insides are just as messed up as my insides. And so I don't feel that I really am interested in hiding things. And I think a lot of the pain that people have comes from holding on to things and hiding them. And in my family of origin, people didn't talk about, well, for instance, alcoholism happening in the house. And we just pretended like nothing was happening, and I found that really, really distorting and crazy making. And so I would much rather, I would tell almost anyone almost anything above hiding something. I can't stand hiding things. So I didn't develop it or work for it or try for it. I don't think that everybody that knows me appreciates it. And actually a lot of people that don't know me don't appreciate it either. I had lunch once.
They can go to hell.
I had lunch once with Martha Solano, who's a wonderful poet who died about a year ago. And I think a lot of people think I'm gonna be really ferocious, when they meet me after reading my work. And we sat down and she looked at me and she said, "Francesca, I've never met you before. Why, you're lovely." So I don't know. Anyway, that's enough about that, about my frankness.
You, Mr. Blue Shirt.
Francesca, did you ever do anything you were just horribly ashamed of?
Have I ever done anything
That you were horribly ashamed of?
Yeah.
And did you write about it?
I haven't written about the thing I'm most ashamed of, although I don't mind telling you all what it is. I once was babysitting an infant and handed him over to his extraordinarily drunk parents because I was to drive him home because I was too upset and unsure of how to confront the alcoholism. That's the worst thing I've ever done.
Bad.
This is terrible. He could have died. It's a very bad thing to do.
But he didn't.
Well, he didn't, but still. No, it's okay. It was a bad thing to do. We've all done things we're ashamed of. I've written about other things, but I haven't written about the very worst thing. Mostly because it involves other people's story a little bit in an uncomfortable way. Well, although now I've announced it on the internet because we're being filmed.
But you didn't name any names. That was good.
No, they'll know. But that's okay. Yeah, they'll know.
Well, I think we should break for refreshments.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I thank these two lovely poets, absolutely lovely poets, Molly Fisk and Francesca Bell.